Welcome everyone to our event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here, where we discuss all kinds of topics that help us live an engaged life. And while we do so, enjoy the journey that we have been gifted with. So, I wanted to do something a little different. It is strange, but it's kind of dropped into my spirit. It's been sitting here, it's been percolating. So this is not the typical thing I've done. Not even all the other strange things. This is like the first time I'm going to do this, and it's going to be pretty short. So even if we don't finish, if we don't extend it to 30 minutes, doesn't really matter. It all depends on Shanaz and what Shanaz thinks, and therefore, as I mentioned, Shanaz, welcome to my co-host, Shanaz, who always joins me on a Monday afternoon. And yes, what I wanted to talk about was greater expectations. Now, and I call it greater expectations, but maybe because I don't want to say great expectations and then you think about the Charles Dickens novel, but greater expectations, having greater expectations. And it doesn't matter what your context is, doesn't matter what your environment is expecting something better, expecting an improvement. And normally I would go and look at at some book, or look at the outline of a book, synopsis, browse through the book to see what are the points there that are relevant that we can possibly discuss. Whether we agree with the points or not is not always the thing, but it's to discuss the elements that it holds and to glean from it anything that we can use and apply in our own lives. So, these greater expectations, I want to link it to a character in a story. And I get this character from the Bible, from the New Testament in the Bible. And when I think about this character, I think about faith under fire. What is that level of faith? And it boggles my mind when I think about it. But suddenly, this came up for me in terms of when I think about what is it that I want to discuss today, and also when I review what Shanaz has spoken about. But basically, this character that I want to talk about is a woman who had a continuous menstrual cycle, and her story. I don't know her entire story. I don't know her background. I don't know anything else except the moment when there was an impact, and she, because she put her faith under fire, I think was pursuing greater expectations. And in this case, the greater expectations were the greater expectation was that she would be healed. Now, because of this never-ending menstrual cycle, and different versions would call it issue of blood and continual discharge in the different translations and so on. But she had this menstrual cycle, and she tried for a long time to get healing until she depleted all her funds, until she was completely desperate. And obviously, in her life, she was governed by the laws of her community. And the laws of a community stipulated that even in a good month, when you have normal menstrual cycles, while you're having it, you're considered to be unclean. Anything that you touch or any person that you touch is considered to be unclean, and you need to therefore handle it in a certain way, restitution and so forth. And you got to wait a certain period until um, the cycle is passed. But in the case of where you have a menstrual cycle that never ceases beyond the norm, then you kind of have to, the unclean nature of the cycle continues, and you once again you have to ensure that you don't touch anything, or anything that you do touch is not where other people can touch it, and you cannot touch people. And so if you can imagine that for years, many years, she was living a secluded life. She was not making contact with people, could not make contact with people, right? That human desire to touch and to be touched, she could not meet it. Never mind being bent double over. And I don't know if she particularly suffered from pain. I think some accounts would say that there could have been immense discomfort in a world. So she tried everything, everything. Her sort of secluded lifestyle, forced seclusion, isolation, was something. And also, I think there was also shame and embarrassment because being unclean required that once your condition improved, you are then needing to give a both a guilt and a sin offering because it was taken very seriously. And then there's even a longer period, a 7-day period, in which you still have to steer clear of people until you are then ceremonially clean. So, interestingly enough, and it's funny, she came to the end of all the particular options that she could employ. Spent every single cent on trying to get her healing, and nothing worked. And then she heard about this healer that, on a daily basis, whether it was in the marketplace or wherever he traveled around, he would heal people. He would heal crowds of people, and she heard of all the miracles that he was performing. And it just so happened that she heard that he was in her vicinity, in the neighborhood of where she was. Now, I even imagine she is a woman of noble character, so she would wear clothes that would warn people that she was unclean and they could steer clear from her, and she did all those good things. But when she heard about Jesus, this was the one last solution that she was going to try. And obviously, in her mind, she's going to roll the dice and see what happens, because this was the last thing that she was going to do. So she entered into the marketplace. Now, Jesus at that time was on his way to a certain household where he was asked to come and heal a little girl that was very ill. And so, as is wont, he's walking with his disciples in this crowded place, and everybody's always following him and so on. So, firstly, let me tell you, she did not dress as she normally did because she needed to blend in the crowd, right? So, number one, she changed what she was wearing to blend so that nobody notices her, because what she needed to do was to push through a crowd. Now, here is what I want you to fully understand today. In order for her to push through a crowd, she needed to touch many people. So she would cause ceremonial uncleanness in everybody that she was going to do. And since she was doing this in a way that was like furtive and beneath the radar, these people would not know. And if they do discover that this is what she did, you know what? It would lead to her being stoned and stoned to death. So she was taking a huge risk. She was going to be killed if she was not careful. And in her mind, she said to herself, the very thing that the law, and this is the Mosaic law, the law prohibited her to do was, she said in her mind, the only thing I need to do is just touch his garment. And it's interesting thing is, by touching the man of faith's garment, this is now Jesus, she will render him unclean. But she didn't think about it. All she thought about, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. And to get to him, I'm going to render all these people unclean. Anyway, so she does. I don't know how she did this, whether she just pushed to them. When many people, when they tell the story, some would say, she was crawling through the crowd on a hands and knees and these kinds of things. But it's not always possible, to come up. But we can use our imagination, because we don't have the full facts. All I can tell you is, here was a person with fear gripping her, and she's rendering all these other people unclean, and she makes her way through the crowd, and she gets close to Jesus, and she touches his clothes. Now, the Bible tells us that immediately Jesus felt the power draining out of him. And all she then needed to do was get away. And I think she was on her way. She touched him and she was making her way back through the crowd and back to her home. Not really. And Jesus looked around and he said, "Who touched me? Who touched me?" And it's interesting that he used those words, "Who touched me?" And everybody's saying, "But why are you asking who's touching you?" Everybody around you is jostling around you and making contact with you and touching you in some way, shape, or form. But what she did was she touched him with her faith. Because she had the greater expectation to be healed, she didn't need him to pray over her, touch her and put his hand upon her so that she can experience this healing. She said to herself, "I only need to touch his clothes. That's going to be good enough for me. And I think I will be healed. And I trust I will be healed." Her expectation was that she would be healed. But what Jesus then did was very interesting. He stopped working. Now, you must understand, he's on an urgent mission to go and save a little girl's life. And he stops. And when he asks, "Who touched me?" And in that moment, what really strikes me is Jesus knew who touched him because, he's the Son of God. He knew that, but he needed her to display the courage. This is why I call it faith under fire. She needed to display her courage in that moment. And for me, that means fearing death itself. Instead of making her way through the cloud and staying hidden, the Bible says that she confessed and she said, "I touched you." Trembling, thinking that she's, being exposed in this manner, probably running through her mind is that maybe her healing has happened, but, they're going to, the crowd, if they understand, they might stone her, actually. Fearing that, absolutely. But despite that fear, she stands up for herself and she says, "It's me. I touched you." And it was interesting. Jesus turns around and he says to her, "Your faith has healed you. Go in peace." He absolves her of the strategy that she followed. She had to break a rule, she had to break a law, endanger her life. But what I want us to realize is that her expectation that she had in her desperation was met. She could have just given up on her life. She could have just decided, well, that's it. I am just gonna wait out my life in exile, or maybe even do something to herself. Anyway, the point is, to me, she is worthy of my respect. She's worthy uh, uh, as somebody who is a hero, right? Because of her faith, because of her courage, she acted. She didn't just sit back and say, "Well, okay, nothing else is working, and therefore I'm giving up on life." So the point is today is first and foremost to encourage us all when we think we have tried everything and we're about to give up. My challenge is, what are you then willing to do? Are you willing to go to this length to pursue your greater expectation of a change in your condition, of wanting more, wherever you find yourself, right? She, for me, is a symbolism of having a vision, of having a picture of change, and then risking everything to step into that positive expectation of the future. We sometimes don't want to do things because we think it's going to be unpopular. What will my family say? What will my friends say? What will society say? No, it's going to be, especially these days, we talk about the social media aspect. social media might just lynch me. I might just die at the hands of social media, and I mean that metaphoric. In the pursuit of what you believe is your purpose, what you believe is a vision that you have. And I want to talk just, or I want to mention that when I say you want more, I'm talking even to the person that doesn't know where their food is coming from in this day, what they're going to be putting on the table, whether it's just about themselves or feeding somebody else. Do you have an expectation, a greater expectation of more? Does that galvanize you into action to take the steps necessary? How desperate are you to step out and trust that it's going to be worthwhile, that you will have favor, you will do the thing that connects you to a higher order. Now, when I'm talking about that, spiritually speaking, it's faith, right? It's believing in something, it's believing in the supernatural. And I believe in today's age is that we're looking from, if we just always look from a humanist carnal perspective, and we talk about, yeah, what am I able to do, it is without recognizing that we are connected to a spiritual being of the highest order, and this in this case is God himself. Then what is he able to do in our lives in order for us to achieve that which we expect better than where we find ourselves? Anyway, that story I wanted to just tell like that, totally unscripted. I haven't got notes, I just wanted to share it like that. So I just want to end it off with, have the greater expectation for your life, for your career, right? For your business, for that relationship. Have a greater expectation and do what it takes to achieve that which you so desire. So that's me. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I am not quite sure how to. There's several ways I can respond. Firstly, I was like, okay, preach it, brother. And I'm like, okay, but did someone perhaps criticize us for not being spiritual enough? But I can also kind of go along with it. I think that it's really can go both ways in terms of how much are you willing to sacrifice for your, and what are you willing to sacrifice to change your circumstances. And I think that this woman decided to try something she hasn't tried before. And that goes for both spiritual, spiritually and materially, or in our daily lives. And sometimes you can't separate the spiritual from your daily life. It's so connected. So yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you said, "Oh, we were we being criticized?" No, we weren't actually for not being. But the fact of the matter is, for both of us, I mean, we both believers, right? And for anybody who's listening to this, there is also the encouragement is to integrate your faith in everything that you're doing. She had to go into the marketplace, so in that way, as a business person or academic or whatever organization you are in, is like, okay, this is just the spiritual side of things. Let me not bring that in terms of what I do, my career, the issue that I have in terms of selling a new strategy, a new campaign, or what those kinds of things is letting your faith, right, be visible. I mean, what's the worst that can happen if you stand by your faith, if you are able to express your faith, if you know that having tried everything, right? And we're talking about sacrifices, but also being able to say, all right, our organization is going through growing pains or challenges or what those kinds of things are. Let's pray. you know, why not? Why? Why is that not an interesting? I've got a client who absolutely what he brings into our coaching sessions. He wants to make sure that superior wisdom of the highest order, and he sees this through God, is present in our conversations. Um, Sometimes I feel that we become closeted in our journey in the marketplace. We become invisible, so the people who make contact with us are not even aware that we are believers, but be connected to God. Do not be ashamed. Do not think it's inappropriate, but with courage, express yourself, live out your faith. And in terms of what we're talking about, yeah, I'm hoping that we're starting a trend where we do bring in our belief system in terms of moving forward. It's nice to look at science. It's great to look at current thinking in terms of the different topics that we address. But I think we cannot leave behind our faith, who we believe in. That is part and parcel of the journey of life.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that I purposefully leave out. I think that I like to think. Maybe it doesn't come across always. I like to think that my thinking is integrated in terms of when I bring myself and I bring my work. I think that I do operate in at times a very secular environment where I can't bring, it's not my own business. For example, I'm in public. My profession as well doesn't always allow me to practice openly my faith, but that doesn't mean that I don't bring it in, and I can't bring it in when it's appropriate. And I think that most times I do. I like to think of the fact that I'm placed in my student's life for a reason and a purpose, and so I think that when I do become stuck and I have no answers, that definitely my faith and God and prayer is where I always bring myself. And with my students who are open about God and sharing their faith, that's kind of what I do.
Hmm.
Mm.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, for me, really, it's just an encouragement. I guess, with anything that we talk about, if it's not just a teaching and sharing principles, this particular topic is about that integration, understanding that we embrace all that we are, body, soul, and spirit, and it's so important, and you know what, that type of, and I now I'm using convergence as well in terms of just ensuring that, especially when it comes to, as you just said, Shanaz, especially when it comes to, first and foremost, seeing the role that you play in the different places, in the different environments, as a calling, so there's a purpose, and that purpose is fueled and resourced by God Himself. And believing in terms of seasons and all these kind. But what is the measure of your impact? Understanding it's not just physical, but the long lasting, the indelible impression that, as a calling, you're making to the people, your students, in this case, my clients, society at large, community, whatever that might is, when the journey that we're traveling on becomes difficult and tough, and this is a time of year that, somebody spoke about the other day, is that people come out of the woodwork looking to connect. Whether it's looking, chasing long lost friendships, relationships, whether it's romantic stuff, is that don't want to go into December feeling alone. I think, understanding that you have a spiritual connection also deals with that feelings of loneliness, or being alone, is like knowing you are never alone. Yes, we want to be amongst people, but not because we feel less than, and we feel we need people, and because we don't have that, it kind of hamstrings us a little bit in the way we're living our lives and so forth. Anyway, for what it's worth, it is just a reminder, and it's signaling for me is to become a lot more vocal in terms of what we're talking about. I mean, this is a platform, open platform. We publishing this, you listen, you don't listen, but bring your faith and what you believe in. Let it be the foundation to your purpose, your call, and how you see your life unfold.
Sounds really good.
So we will be meeting again next week, Shanas.
Yep.
Is that
Yep,
correct?
we will.
Okay. So thank you very much. I like the fact that you are very flexible and open and objective. And thank you, Julia, for being there in the background. And yes, listen to the playback again on this platform, Clubhouse, or you could listen to the edited version on a YouTube channel, the Mufasa Coaching Practice. So until next week, we are ready to share with you again our thoughts on a variety of topics, and it will be Shanas next week. So have a fantastic week. Goodbye for now.
Bye. Thank you.